Hello and welcome to my review of the Rocktron Piranha. Now this thing was built by Rocktron in the mid to late 90s, I believe. I can't find exact dates even after searching on the internet for a while, but it certainly wasn't widely available here in the UK. Back then the Rocktron Voodoo valve was available because I bought this in about 95, but I never saw one of these for sale. I did see a few pictures in magazines, certainly seen a lot more talk about it on the internet, but luckily for me one of these things came up on eBay here in the UK very recently, so I took the plunge and bought it. I think I paid a couple £100 for it. Took a punt. It's old technology, it's quite an old unit. It's very well built, still works fine, sounds great. I'm delighted with it, I must admit. One interesting point, because it probably wasn't ever sold officially in the UK or Europe, I had to buy a step down transformer because it takes an input voltage of 110, whereas here in the UK we've got 240 volts. But that aside, without further ado, let's dive into this review. I'll be telling you a little bit about how it works inside, be playing it so you can hear what it sounds like, and talking about how it functions and how you can use it. So without any further ado, let's hear a piece of music where all guitar parts have been performed using the Rocktron Piranha. Okay, let's walk through the front panel on the Piranha. Operating it couldn't really be much simpler. Starting at the left, we've got the on-off button, obviously. Then we've got two displays. We've got the left LED display, which shows the current preset that you're in, and then we have the value LED display, which shows the value of the parameter that you're currently editing. Then we've got a couple of buttons up and down. It's pretty obvious, really. As you go down or up, it scrolls through the patches. Then we have the store button here. So the store button, if you make a change to a patch, if you start editing any parameters and you want to commit that to memory, you just push the store button twice. Then we have the hush button here. So the Piranha's got this hush noise reduction circuitry, which is something that Rocktron are renowned for. Obviously this is a fairly early iteration of their noise reduction circuitry. But it varies in, the parameter varies in value from minus 70 dB all the way up to 0 dB, and that basically sets the threshold at which a voltage controlled amplifier type expansion type circuitry cuts in or not. But it's more than just a simple expander stroke noise gate, which would be a rather crude way of noise reduction. There's intelligent circuitry in there as well, which actually analyzes a signal, and so if you're playing a long sustained guitar note, it won't cut off the note too early. If you're playing quieter passages, it'll try and work out whether you're actually playing a note or not, as to whether it brings in the noise circuitry. How well does it work? It works pretty well. If you're playing abrupt sort of thrash metal and you want that sort of staccato cutting off, you don't want too much noise in between, it works fine. It doesn't tend to work that well for long sustained notes and high gain solos, so I tend to leave it off for that kind of application. Anyway, the next button here is the loop button. This basically switches in the effects loop on a given patch, yes or no, and you can commit that to memory. So the next button down is the global button. Now this is a very cool button here, cool feature of the unit. What this does is when you push global, if you adjust any one of the EQ settings, then that change is applied globally across all the presets in memory. So if you're playing a venue where you need to cut the bass on all the patches, or then pushing the global button and adjusting the bass setting will do that. And that global change will remain in effect as long as you don't touch the global button again. So you push that once, make the change, and remember that change for the duration of the gig, and then as soon as you switch the global button off and switch off the unit, then that global change is forgotten. Then the next button along is essentially these two buttons here. Select the channel that you want to use on a given patch. So on the distortion channel, we've basically got two channels. We've got the classic tube distortion, and then when that LED is constantly illuminated, then you're in the classic tube distortion channel. If you push that again, there you go, you can see that flashing now. It may not come across on the camera too much, but it's flashing very rapidly. When it's in that mode, you're in the modern high gain distortion mode. So basically you've got two different sort of distortion voicings, and then this button here just switches it to the clean channel. Okay, so then we have the EQ settings. So we've got the bass, which goes from 0 up to plus 15 or minus 15, and you can see that as soon as I start changing the bass, and i.e. editing the EQ on this patch, you can see the store LED starts to flash, indicating that I've made a change, and if I wanted to store that change, then I'll just push that button twice. So put that back to 0. If we go to the mid, again the level of the mid you can change from plus 15 to minus 15, but then the mid is sweepable. So this button here alters the frequency of the mid band that you want to cut or boost. So it starts at 250 Hertz and it goes all the way up to 7 kilohertz. Just check that. Yeah, all the way up to 7 kilohertz. Now, what is the frequency of the bass EQ setting here? So it doesn't actually say in the manual what frequency the bass is, but I'm assuming that it's a low shelf boost or cut, and the shelf tails off probably at around 150 to 200 Hertz, because the mid comes in at 250, so it's probably around that sort of value. And then if we go one more dial to the right, we have the treble, and the treble again goes from plus 15 to minus 15. Again, it doesn't say in the manual what exactly the treble filter is, but I'm assuming it's a high shelf filter, and it probably comes in at around 8 to 9 kilohertz. Then we've got the gain, and so gain, well, just goes from 0 to 70, sort of arbitrary units. How does the gain work with the different channel voicings? Well, when you're in the clean channel, if you go to a gain setting of around 0 to 15, then you're ultra clean, and you have to really give it some welly on the level so that you can get the volume level up. But as you increase the gain up to 70 on the clean channel, it's fairly crunchy. It's sort of like a bluesy breakup kind of a tone. Whereas on the two distortion channels, they are there's quite a lot of gain there, and if you put the gain down to say about 10 or 15, it's like a sort of a rock crunch rhythm tone. And as you go up to 70, you're in the more lead distortion tone territory. Now, I wouldn't say when you're on full gain there's massive amounts of distortion. It's enough to play quickly with and do fast leads, but it's not so dirty that you get loads of handling noise. So it's actually quite a good patch for fast picking and hammer-ons and tapping and what have you. You have to maybe play a little bit harder because it's not as touch sensitive as other units that have got even more gain. But on the plus side, you get less handling noise, so you can sort of, once you get used to playing with these tones, then you can play really quickly, and it sounds a little bit cleaner because you haven't got all the handling noise going on. But every preamp is different. Every preamp's got its own idiosyncrasies with respect to how it sounds and how it feels to play, and that's my impression of how the Piranha responds. So then we move to the next two buttons here. These are just the input and output levels. So the output level I usually have around here at about 60%, and then the input level actually says the input drive, and the unit does respond differently as you crank up the input level, and as you turn it more to the right, you actually get higher levels of distortion, gain. So I tend to have that cranked quite high to the right. So the signal comes out of the Piranha and goes through the Rocktron expression I have here for effects and into the Mesa Boogie Simulclass 290 valve power amp. On the expression I've got a patch which basically gives me chorus, delay, reverb and phaser effects, and the Simulclass is in the half drive mode. Okay, let's have a look at some of the high gain, the modern distortion tone settings, and see what sort of sounds we can get out of the Piranha. So currently we've got the bass at 0 setting, mid at 0, and the treble at just +2. So this is kind of like a neutral setting on the EQ. We've got the gain on full, and well, levels on 15, but okay, so here's the sort of sounds we can get out of it. Right, so let's see how changing the bass. We'll put the bass up a bit.
kilohertz.
Okay, let's have a listen to the classic distortion tone, the lower gain distortion tone. So that's when you're in that mode, the LED button here just stays on, constantly lit rather than flashing. So in the same place with 0 on the middle, 0 on the bass, 0 on the middle, and just a little bit up on the treble. Gains on full. That's dry. Listen to the clean channel, so I have to back the gain down because it does sort of dirty, get a little bit dirty as you turn the gain up. So I'll turn the gain kind of down to turn the level up to compensate. Put it on the middle pickup. Maybe front tap to the middle. Dirtying up the tab. Let's have a look inside the Rocktron Piranha. So here it is with the lid off. First thing I noticed when I opened it up was how high quality all the components were. The case, the dials, all the connectors, the capacitors, everything seems to be very well built and very high quality. My particular example was a little bit dirty inside, so I just cleaned it up, got rid of a lot of the dust. So the first thing to comment on is there's a couple of 12AX7 preamp valves down here in the bottom right. When I put a voltmeter across them, it was fairly easy to work out that the upper valve only uses one of its two triode stages. So a 12AX7 valve has got two independent triodes inside it, and in the Piranha, this top valve here only uses one of the triode stages. So I'm surmising that this valve is the clean channel valve. The bottom valve uses both triode stages, so this must be the valve responsible for the distortion channels. Now I put a voltmeter across the anode or the plate, and I only measured about 55 volts. So whilst it claims to be a high voltage preamp, it's not really that high voltage at all. 50 volts as an anode voltage is very low for a 12AX7 valve. Most tube guitar amplifiers and other preamps like the Mesa Boogie Triaxis or the ADA MP1 have much higher plate voltages, 150 volts or upwards. So the Piranha is really getting close to what you might call a starved plate design. But unlike the Voodoo valve, where most of the distortion is generated completely digitally and the valve is nothing but an input buffer, in the Piranha it is fairly clear to me that the second valve tube here generates genuine valve distortion. So the waveform is actually clipped or distorted by overdriving the gain stages in the valve. Now there may be additional distortion added elsewhere in the circuit using diodes, but I couldn't find a circuit diagram. The transformer is a very high quality toroidal transformer. So up here we have the main CPU of the unit. Now this is an EEPROM chip. I can't see what type of chip it is because there's a Rocktron sticker slapped on it, and the sticker's got a date of 1995 marked on it, so that gives you an idea when this unit was built. I reckon that getting your hands on this chip, and not only just the chip itself but the chip with the firmware flashed onto it, could be pretty difficult if you ever need to get a new one if this chip fails. It doesn't look to me as though Rocktron offer any spares, but they might do if you contacted them. This chip here is the main memory chip. This stores all the presets. Interestingly, the Piranha doesn't have an internal battery, so this EEPROM chip stores memory without a voltage supply. So this chip is commonly available. I managed to buy a couple of spares for a couple of pounds. I thought it would be a good idea to have a few spares tucked away just in case. So overall I'm very impressed with the build quality and the quality of the components inside the unit. This thing really is built very well. Some of the smoothing capacitors here, again, they seem to be absolutely fine. Of course, capacitors tend to lose their capacitance with use, and temperature really, age has an effect, but the real thing that kills capacitors is operating hours and operating temperature. But looking at them, they're not bulging at the caps. They visually look okay. They don't seem to be leaking electrolyte or anything, so hopefully they've got plenty of life left. But because this unit isn't a particularly high voltage unit, the voltage coming off the transformer is fairly low. The smoothing caps are lower capacitance and probably, hopefully, will last a little bit longer because of that. But I think back in the 90s as well, they maybe were using higher quality component capacitors. We'll see, but anyway, replacing capacitors is not a particularly difficult job. But anyway, everything seems to be working absolutely fine with my Piranha. so no complaints there. So I love this old back mount guitar preamp technology. I wish they made more of it today. It's a shame that so many guitar amp manufacturers got out of this side of things. On that score, the Rocktron Piranha is a really good example of the best of this kind of technology. In my opinion, I think Rocktron should still be making this unit or something similar to it, because it sounds very different to the Voodoo Valve and the Prophecy. It's got a very different kind of look and feel to it, and for many guitarists perhaps the simpler direct access to the EQ type layout is more desirable. But anyway, I think Rocktron could still make this and sell this unit probably at a lower price point than the Voodoo Valve, and it would be an excellent choice for many guitarists. It does sound really, really good. The quality of it is excellent. As I said earlier in this video, it's really well built, surprisingly well built actually. Now, given that this unit is 20 years old and still going strong, that's testament to that build quality. But of course, you know, if you see one on eBay, it's definitely worth taking a punt and buying one. I mean, try and ascertain that it's working okay. Perhaps don't pay too much, because you are getting 20-year-old electronics. But the way I look at it is, it's always worth buying this stuff, because if it fails, you can always get it repaired. There are good guitar electronics technicians out there who can fix this stuff. And usually when you get a failure, it's something that's pretty trivial and for an electronics guy to repair. There's a guy in Scotland called Dennis Marshall. If anybody out there has got some vintage rack gear or vintage amplifier kit that they want repairing, Dennis Marshall is an absolutely brilliant repair technician, and he could fix anything. Perhaps one thing that could be a little bit tricky is with these digitally controlled preamps, is they all have a central CPU control chip, an EEPROM, and they have firmware flashed onto them by the factory at the point of production. And if that chip fails, it can be, I'm surmising or supposing, it could be quite difficult to try and get a replacement chip. I know for the Piranha, I've had it open, and as I said earlier in the video, there's the control chip on this has got a date stamped on it of 1989. So this is quite old. These are quite old chips, and I don't think Rocktron will sell spares. So if that central brain CPU goes, trying to get the same chip with the firmware flashed on it could be quite tricky. With other units like the Mesa Boogie Triax, which is still in semi-official production, the Triax is such a popular preamp that spare chips, it's not hard to get hold of them. But anyway, that's a side concern. Buying old digital equipment like this, there's a little bit of a risk attached to it, but the potential gains outweigh that risk in my opinion. Anyway, that finishes my review of the Rocktron Piranha. Thanks for watching. I'll be putting more videos of guitar related stuff in the future, so over and out.